Hello! Thanks, guys, for waiting 2 weeks for the next instalment on John. We're on John chapter
8,
8.
Which is the woman that was caught in adultery. So quite a heavy topic.
It's a heavy topic.
Are we watching a video
We're
today?
going to watch a video
Yes,
today as well. So there'll be a video in a sec. Just have a look at the perspectives of the Pharisees, of Jesus, and the woman caught in adultery. So just have a look at those three things going on, and then we'll talk about them afterwards. So enjoy.
Of Olives. Early the next morning he went back to the temple. All the people gathered round him, and he sat down and began to teach them. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman who had been caught committing adultery, and they made her stand before them all.
Teacher! This woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. In our law, Moses commanded that such a woman must be stoned to death. Now, what do you say?
They said this to trap Jesus, so that they could accuse him. But he bent over and wrote on the ground with his finger. As they stood there asking him questions, he straightened up.
Whichever one of you has committed no sin may throw the first stone at her.
Then he bent over again and wrote on the ground. When they heard this, they all left, one by one, the older ones first. Jesus was left alone with the woman still standing there. He straightened up.
Where are they? Is there no one left to condemn you?
No one, sir.
Well then, I do not condemn you either. Go. But do not sin again.
Yeah, pretty heavy, but really, really loads to take away from it. So, Beth's going to do an overview of what it is.
Yeah, so basically, Jesus was in the temple, he was teaching. The Jews brought a woman caught in adultery to Jesus, and then Jesus told them to cast a stone if they were sinless, which is pretty mad. And then Jesus told the woman not to sin anymore.
Yeah.
So that's just a summary, as we do.
Like a point-by-point thing. So verse 3 we'll start at, which is, why did they bring this woman to Jesus? So I thought this was really interesting. So the Jews at this point did not like Jesus, obviously, as we've known, and coming up to chapter 8, they started to be a bit like, whoa, we don't like this guy. So at the point, they didn't like Jesus and were only out to get the better of him, or to find him, like, slip up in some way. So they asked him, in the law according to Moses, we should stone this person. Which is fair enough, because that was in the Old Testament. That's what they should do. This was quite a shrewd question, though.
Which means shrewd?
Shrewd, as in the question was like, it was designed to kind of trip him up, because any way that he answered, it would have been wrong. So if he said yes, then they would have taken him straight to the Romans and got Jesus arrested, because it was actually illegal to carry out capital punishment, which is killing someone under the law. So that was illegal in Rome. It was a Jewish law, but they would have gone to the Romans. Oh, he's about to kill someone. Go and arrest him. Yeah, that sort of thing. So he couldn't have said no. Sorry, he couldn't have said yes, but he also couldn't have said no, because they would have gone, he doesn't believe in the law of Moses. So he couldn't have said yes, he couldn't have said no. So it was just purely designed to tie him up.
But yeah, that happens a lot with us a lot of the time too. So people try and tie us up when we talk about Jesus to others. Mm-hmm. Like when you talk to others about God, if all they want is an argument, which is sometimes quite a lot of people, then actually, as we said in previous videos, it's actually okay to walk away, because you can try and bring it back to Jesus each time, but if they really don't want to know and they're just in it just because they've got anger, or they just want to try and trip you up and be like, then that is, their heart isn't in the right place to even receive Jesus. So I think we can discern and we can decide, actually, I think I'll walk away from this.
Yeah. I always think, like, at the end, if you feel like someone's trying to do that, I always if Christianity was true, would you be a Christian? And their response sometimes is no. And then you know that they're just trying to have a debate, they're trying to have an argument, and there's not any logical sense there. They're just trying to debate and just trying to get you angry. And I think that Jesus was very angry at this, because if you imagine it, there was a big crowd. They literally just pulled a woman out that they knew was like, an adulterer, basically. Everyone kind of knew this woman was, and they literally just pulled her out of the crowd by her arm and said, this woman's caught in adultery. So they were just using this woman as like a pawn on a chessboard, just to say, look at her, this is it. So he was probably furious with that, as we all would be. It's disgusting the way they treated her. But you'll notice as the passage goes on, Jesus actually ignored them. He bent down in the sand and wrote something. So no one knows what he wrote there, which is really interesting as to what he may have wrote. There's lots of different theories, but no one actually really knows. But he almost acts as if he doesn't even hear the question. He just, they asked him this question and he just bent down and started writing, which I like. I mean, some think it was because he was just horrified at their actions. He was just like, that's disgusting. That doesn't even warrant a response. And some people think it's because he was too angry to talk, because of what they were doing to this poor woman. But it just shows us sometimes it's better to not answer a question when you know it's just a trap. So that's what we can learn from that little bit there.
And then so that was sort of 3 to 6.
Get to the main
moving
verse.
to like verse 7 to 8. Basically Jesus is saying, all right, this woman has broken the law. Let's stone her.
Yeah, so he's saying, like, he's broken the law, let's stone her.
But the perfect person among you, if you're perfect, you should do it. So he's saying, like, if there is a perfect person who is without sin, they should be the one to throw the stone, which completely probably flips them. They're like, hang on a minute, wait, none of us are perfect. Yeah. So that completely puts them in the boat of, how am I going to come back to what Jesus has just said?
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
No, exactly. Yeah, the Pharisees couldn't even stoop that low. I mean, they weren't as low to say they were perfect, so they just started walking away. Yeah,
and Jesus knew fully well that no one was perfect, so he was sort of setting them up to fail as well.
Yeah,
in some ways,
exactly.
to kind of use the same.
Re-trapped their question, which is so. It's actually such a good conversation that they had. It's a brilliant response as well, because Jesus abides by the Jewish law, because he doesn't actually say don't stone her. He said, all right, let's stone her, but who's going to be the one to do it, because everyone's sinful. So he brings like a deeper, more loving and more spiritual message to it.
He doesn't even like say yes or no. He sort of does yes and no.
Yeah.
But he doesn't, as you said, it doesn't actually contradict what the Bible says or the law says, and it doesn't actually mean killing anyone. It just kind of
it's such a good response. It's like, it's so good.
We can easily learn from this, can't we?
Yeah, like about not casting judgment on someone if we're doing the exact same thing. So this doesn't mean as well that we don't mention a sin that a Christian's doing, but we shouldn't be so quick to judge a fellow believer if we're participating in the same sin. You shouldn't say, you shouldn't be doing that. It's just silly. We must realise that we too are sinners and deserve punishment just as much as the next person. We're all sinners. This is what he's saying.
And moving on to verse 9, we rethought of the questions like, why did the older ones leave first?
Yeah.
And what do you think about that?
It's weird. Like for some reason, Jesus wrote on the floor again, and then the older Pharisees started leaving, and then like literally, like it almost seems like in age order they started leaving. But we were saying like maybe it's because they're just wiser because they're older and they realise their own sin first. So like it's a good lesson in humility. The older you get in the faith, the more sin God reveals to you. So the older ones knew exactly what Jesus was getting out and made a pretty quick exit. They were like,
they're happy to probably, or they're more humble, so they probably will admit it. Whereas when you're sometimes younger, you're a bit like, no, I'm not sinful.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not like that.
Or the really hyped up young Pharisees were probably just, saying, oh no, we should still stone her, I don't care, that. And the older ones were like, actually, let's calm down. We're both sinful. I get what he's saying. We should leave now because we've been rumbled.
But yeah, you go to verse 10. Everyone was gone except Jesus.
Yeah, so then Jesus said, no one here condemns you. That's amazing, isn't it? 'Cause he was alone with her.
And she probably felt like so much condemnation because she was being brought up in front of the crowd and the Pharisees were pointing the finger. So I think she probably that time was thinking, had a lot of weight on her shoulders. And then to hear that, she's probably like, wow.
Yeah. But amazing to hear no one here condemns you when Jesus was stood there. So not Jesus is saying, I don't condemn you either. So that would have been an amazing feeling, even though he had no sin. So Jesus, technically and lawfully, was totally within his rights to throw stones. I mean, he could have done. But his grace and mercy outweighed that want and that ability to throw the stone. He just had so much grace, so much mercy. He just said, actually, I know you sinned, and we all know it, but I'm not going to condemn you for it. So that just really shows there really is no condemnation for those in Christ Jesus. That other verse in the Bible, which just really gives you like an event that makes that really certain.
And then the last verse is verse 11. So I think this verse, a lot of sermons and teachings that we've heard, like leave this part out.
Go and sin no more.
Go and sin no more. Which actually could be the most important part for us as Christians, couldn't it? Yeah,
so like obviously if you think about it as a gospel experience, this woman caught in adultery, she gets almost saved at the part where Jesus physically saves her from being stoned, and then he's like, right, now you've got no condemnation, now I've given you my grace and mercy, just like us when we come to Jesus. Now go and sin no more. So really, the last part is what we should be focusing on as Christians, because we've done the bit that's getting saved from the stoning in that sense, and now we're at the part where we sin no more. Obviously, absolutely impossible. All of us sin all the time. But we should strive to do
exactly,
that. Yeah.
Not in a religiously weird way, but in a kind of, Jesus has commanded it, and in a way that we're like, actually, we're so grateful for what Jesus has done for us on the cross and how he saved us. Actually, we are going to want to obey, and that motivates us to actually do good works for him and to try and sin no more. Yeah. But it depends where your heart is in that. Is it you're trying to better someone else like the Pharisees, or is it that you're doing it out of love and gratefulness for what God's done for us?
Yeah, and it's not like a white knuckle discipline of, I'm just not going to sin kind of thing. We're called to live as righteously as possible. But because Jesus, think about being that woman there. That's what I was saying about the perspective. Think about being that woman. You'd want to follow what that man said because he just saved your life. He saved her from the most horrendous death of being stoned. So now, obviously, you're going to listen to that man of what he's going to say. And if he says, don't sin anymore, out of love, sheer respect and gratefulness, thankfulness, you're not going to sin anymore. And that's kind of how the Christian life works, because we really shouldn't just be going, I really want to do that sin, but I'm not because I'm a Christian. It's not about that. It's the more you fall in love with Jesus, the more you realise how terrible you are, really, sinful-wise, all the sins that you have, how depraved you are, the more Jesus becomes more and more beautiful as you become less, kind of thing.
And also putting yourself in the Pharisees' perspective and putting yourself in their shoes, sort of, this is actually so challenging, and it's a lesson to us all on how we shouldn't judge or use weaker ones or weaker people for our for our advantage. Obviously, I think last week we did say we should judge in the right context, but actually judging and looking down on people depends again where your heart is, and it teaches us, this passage, to be humble and to submit, because obviously we know God already knows when we've sinned. We don't have to tell him. It's not like he doesn't know. He knows everything about us and what we're going to do for the rest of our lives. So actually, us admitting and saying to God, "Look, I've sinned today. I'm sorry," and being humble about it and having that attitude is such a step forward, rather than trying to hide it, because we can't hide anything from God.
Yeah, exactly. So we thought about the Pharisees. We've thought about how you'd feel with the woman in adultery, and now think about how you feel as Jesus. We should learn about standing up to those who falsely accuse others, because that's what he did, and respect the law, but still show mercy. So every single perspective, you can really, if you put yourself in those shoes, you can really gain something from this tiny little event that happened. There's a whole gospel message just in Jesus saving that woman and then having no condemnation and then saying, "Go and sin no more." It's the whole Christian life in one event. So it is still a really amazing piece. There's so many great things we can take away. So we actually just encourage you just to go and read it, because it's 12 verses? It would take 5 minutes.
It's 11.
11 verses. Thanks.
Sorry, you have to be precise.
And, it's 11 verses. So it won't take long at all to read, and it is really, really interesting. Like what translation you've got, put it slightly different, and then you can just go in, pray about it, and read it, because God will reveal something to you over it. But yeah, thanks for sticking with us. And we've moved to bi-weekly now, because we've got so much other youth stuff going on. Now we're both full-time employed in other jobs, so it's going to get a bit less, but we really enjoy doing these job videos. So keep staying tuned. Subscribe to the RBC channel, because then you'll get a notification when we do another one, which should be next Thursday.
Well, 2 weeks.
2 weeks Thursday. Next Thursday. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Have a good week.